And just some of my other signals. Again, the trend remains bullish. After the breakout and back test back over here, signals have been back to bullish and have remained that way. We had a little divergence develop right here that gave us the 9% sell-off. Again, we could see triple divergence develop on a lot of my signals, a lot of my oscillators. We can get another push above 100,000 and maybe reach some of these different resistance levels I've been talking about. But we could see something like that happen in the month of December and still go and see closes above 100,000 on Bitcoin. Now, the 9% sell-off that gave us the triangle was giving us a sideways price movement, and that we dropped below this cloud right here. It's flipped back to red, showing the sideways price action. We saw the momentum, the little ribbon turn bearish, but it has now turned back to bullish. To resume the advance with the triangle, we've got to flip this cloud back to bullish. Tried to do it on an intraday basis, was not able to do it, but we are seeing the bars continually remain green through the triangle and through the attempted breakout. There well could be a back test at this time in the 4-hour time frame, something worth watching. Now, we also have off of the 52,000 low here, again, we have the support right here at about 85,000 or so. So again, longer term support levels that even if we were to decline, are the levels we'd have to take out. And then again, the 100 period moving average. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average in the daily time frame. Again, we got above it here, bottomed out at the 52,000 area. We got above it, we pulled back, found support at it, and then we broke out after that. As long as we hold above the 100 period longer term, then longer term bullish. We start eventually trying to top out or go higher and try to top out and start losing that 100 period like we did back over here, then that would be problematic. Again, just looking at these resistance levels I've been talking about in the weekly time frame here, you can see them on the daily chart. We get above these levels, we go to the upper channel, we go to the trend line on the linear scaling. There's a strong possibility that we could stall at some of these trend lines I've been talking about in December or January, so be watching closely. Signals remain bullish in the weekly time frame, which again could take Bitcoin much higher as long as my signals remain bullish. Daily signals at the moment are bullish. We'll see if they flip. Remain bullish. Do we climb to the next levels of resistance? 105, 106,000. Above that, 108, 109,000 on the linear chart, and then 110, 115,000 level in the channel with the log scaling, watching these levels. I want to see how does Bitcoin respond to the jobs report tomorrow and then going into the inflation data next week. You support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. A link, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. But please consider partnering with me. I do need your help in order to make it work. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. Also, make sure you watch the video all the way through. Important things to share with you about Bitcoin's blow-off top targets. Now, I want to do a quick update on the price action with Bitcoin. It's getting some really wild swings with the breakout of the triangle. First, we had the triangle set up and we dropped 9%. We went sideways. We went back up. We got a lower high, pulled back. Again, found support at the 20 here, found support at the 20, the blue line right there. In the daily time frame here. So we've had develop. As I was making the video, I talked about the triangle. As I was making the video yesterday, the triangle, as I was making the video, began to break out. I talked about that in the video. Talked about the target levels and again, told you we were likely going to move of 100,000. Let me just bring this up close, that the triangle was likely a continuation pattern. So we had the breakout. With the Wednesday session, the Thursday session, we continued and we rose all the way up towards the 104,000 area. Now, Bitcoin rallied up, and I've marked it here, about 5%. It rallied up here 5% above this previous close, okay? And then, which you can see right there, and then we came down in the session and we started seeing this topping tail, and then we started going negative in the last part of the trading session, and we ended up dropping back below the low of the triangle, back below the 20-period moving average, the 10-period moving average, the red line, recovered back up, hit 92,000 here, recovered, which is, again, the horizontal support now, the lows over here, came back, hit the low level here. I didn't draw that very straight, but hit that low level right there, right on the nose, rebounded back up, and closed just under the breakout point of the triangle. What wild swings. And we ended up from the high dropping down, losing just over 11%. Still ended up the push above 100,000, but not on a closing basis. And here we have the close. After that breakout, we ended up, when I was making the video, this was happening, we ended up pushing up about 3% there. And then we ended up on the Thursday session down 1.74% after that 5% rally, with Bitcoin up towards 104,000. Giving it all back, ended up down 1.74%, but well off the lows of 92,000, dropping down just over 11%, almost 11.25%. Mr. Toad's wild ride. I expected the 9% sell-off because of this divergence on the RSI and momentum, and we had it on other indicators. That divergence gave us this 9% sell-off. We recovered, and we formed this triangle. So talking about this triple divergence possibly setting up, and again, still see that happen. We had an intraday push above 100,000, but we did not close there because that we have a topping tail and that we start seeing reversal. Now this one bar based on the RSI would be considered a lower high because the RSI doesn't look at the topping tail, it looks at the close. So we still have a lower high on a closing basis. So again, we'll be watching to see if we still get that divergence on a closing basis. If we do a rally with the jobs report tomorrow or the weekend. Next week with the inflation data. Talked about the levels of resistance. Right now we're at the one level and we're stalling, and I told you we could see prices stall there in the weekly time frame. And again, maybe that topping tail is it, but still the possibility of this diversion. So do pay attention to the RSI in the daily time frame. MACD has not turned back up. It still could form a divergence, but so far it hasn't. And we still have the stochastic down. It tried to turn back up with the rally initially and then turned right back down by the close. And right now, as we start Friday session, we're pretty much flat. It's up slightly, 0.08%. So we'll be watching to see if we actually get a close above 100,000. We could be in backtest mode in the 4-hour time frame. Again, here's the breakout right here. We broke out. We came down. Look at this bottoming tail on the 4-hour chart. Again, we took out this level. We came back to the support right in here, this horizontal support, and we bounced. And we got back. We closed in the range of the triangle. Again, we could be backtest. Remember when we broke out of the March high? We broke above the downward trend line. We backtested it. We overthrew it. So we could be seeing something similar to that, the breakout and the backtest here. So if we can resume, I'll be watching to see if a divergence begins to develop in this most recent price action above 100,000 and above this peak just under 104,000 right here. So again, our triangle still very much in play. We've just backtested at least so far here intraday. So we'll be watching that. But a lot of volatility. Again, rising 5% during the session and then dropping back about 11.25, just under 11.25%. And again, this is a preview of coming attractions. Once the blow off top completes for Bitcoin, and I believe it's in a blow off top, but may not be done yet. Still continue to believe Bitcoin still could possibly make it to higher levels before the blow off top completes. So again, we're watching, but you got a good shot that Bitcoin's going to try to peak in December or January. So I'll be watching. Does the divergence develop here? Probably going to see that take place, and we'll see if we try to rally surrounding the jobs report tomorrow. And I want to continue to remind you, I believe the inflation data is going to begin to tick back up. A lot of economists are raising their expectations because of the election. Trump won, and they're anticipating inflation because of the tariffs. And again, let me just say this. We had the tariffs before, and it didn't create the inflation, but he expected back during Trump's first term. The inflation, because supply chain disruptions, the government thought it was a great idea, pass out, $6 trillion in checks. We have all the supply chain disruptions and the business is shutting down, and that created shortages while you had all this demand, and that's where we got the inflation. The Fed did QE 2.0, and that was inflationary. I don't know that if I buy into the argument that the tariffs are going to create this huge amount of inflation. But again, I expect inflation to go up. In 2007, the Fed is doing exactly what they did in 2007 before the financial crisis. The recession was about to hit. The Fed was so concerned about inflation, just like they are right now. And if we get the inflation data ticking up next week, the narrative's going to be, it's going to pause. The Fed should be slashing rates right now because recession is about to hit. Eventually, Bitcoin and the stock market will price that in. Probably see the recession hit in the first quarter, possibly at the second quarter, in April or something, but I believe that we're going to see that recession hit. And guess what? In 2007, inflation went a whole lot higher. And by the way, inflation was in 2007 at this time was a whole lot higher than it is right here and now. I was concerned about inflation back then, and what happened? The recession hit. They started cutting in September. The recession hit in December. A couple months later, the stock market had already peaked a couple months ahead of the recession hitting, which is likely going to be the case. Bitcoin too. Inflation soared, and yet the Fed had an emergency meeting in January. The stock market dropped 20.5%. We started concerns about the economy and recession. They finally figured out, we better lower rates, and they did an emergency jumbo cut of 75 basis points, and then a week later another 50 basis points. Inflation was much higher than it is right now. People telling us, the Fed, not going to lower rates. That's going to be the narrative if we see inflation tick up. The Fed can't lower rates now. Inflation is ticking back up. Poppycock. The Fed is going to lower rates because they're blindsided that the recession is about to start. Recession indicators have already flashed. I don't know what Bitcoin will do in a legitimate recession. They didn't let it happen the last time with all the stimulus, which has given us all of this inflation. Again, have the luxury right now of being in that position. They can lower rates now because eventually the deflationary forces will take care of the inflation, just as it did back in 2008 after they panicked and began the jumbo cuts. I see a very similar situation here. Now, Bitcoin, again, looks like it's in backtest mode. Got a bottoming tail here. We'll see on the 4-hour chart. We'll see if we can go up and make a divergence or triple divergence or whatever ends up forming right here. And that carry us to some of our target levels. Again, here the 50 still above the 200. We're right at that 50 level here on the Bitcoin price. Popping above 100,000, getting back below it. We'll see if we get a couple of closes above the 100,000 area, and then we'll be watching our target levels. This move ends up failing, and we end up just getting this topping tail on the daily chart with this push up here, and it ends up being a head fake. Then I'm still watching this trend. Again, I've been talking about these trend lines. Let me show you the trend line. If this ends up just being a head fake above 100,000 and we can't get back above it, but it looks like we're in backtest mode and we'll probably rally a little bit more. Let me show you the trend line. If that's the case, it's a head fake and we just had a pop and a drop back down 100,000. The big rally, I told you in yesterday's video, the big rally is, President Trump is picking a pro-crypto SEC chair, had a very anti-SEC chair, as you well know. And again, the crypto community is celebrating this, and I talked about that in yesterday's video. Nevertheless, I digress. Again, if this is a head fake, and again, we'll probably see a divergence here. We'll probably see a few more pushes above 100,000. And then we'll be watching the levels I've been talking about, the resistance levels. But if this ends up being a head fake and, we got a pop and a drop and we struggle to get back above it and it's not a back test, it looks like it probably is a back test. It's not. Let me just show you the trend lines again real fast on the weekly chart. Bitcoin still has this trend line to contend with. And again, this is the trend line right here from the 2021 low right here after the first peak in 2021. And the higher low that's set up in 2022 during the decline after the peak in 2021, the second peak in 2021. I've connected that, removing the shadows here, and it's pointing up to where we're at right now, and we've slightly overthrown that level. And again, if we can't get above this trend line, and again, you've got a possible head fake on your hands if we struggle at this trend line. This is the trend line I've been talking about. Have these other targets. Now this is trend line from these highs over here. We've overthrown that already a little bit. This is a trend line from these lows. This is the log scaling. Talked about, do we stall right here and then turn? That's still a possibility, but if we get above this level, we have some other areas. That would be here on this channel. And again, I've drawn the red trend line, including the channel, including the shadow here and this peak right here. If we exclude the shadow here, I could connect it from the black trend line right here, from these highs over here to this level, excluding the shadow. And they both come in very close to the same level, right around the 110, 115,000 area, depending on when we come into contact with it. If we take our time, it would be 120,000. But if we hit it sooner rather than later, you're looking at about 110, 115,000. That's a possibility right there. Target, should we be able to clear this trend line that I've talked about and shown you on the other chart just a moment ago. This is also the log scaling. We have this trend line. This is the linear scaling, and this goes back to 2017. If we come up here and we exclude the shadows here from the first 2021 high and tag the shadow of the second 2021 high, the peak of Bitcoin, the previous peak of Bitcoin, then again, that trend line comes in directly overhead. And again, if we hit it sooner rather than later, you're looking at 105, 106,000. If we take our time hitting it, you're looking at 108, 109,000 or so, somewhere in there. If it drags out into January, again, we're looking at 108, 109,000. If we see it sooner rather than later, 105, 106, maybe 107,000. So again, just watching this trend line, some of these targets for completing the blow off top. And again, we have a blow off top going on here. But just some target levels I'm looking at here in these weekly time frames. Don't forget, Bitcoin's got these divergences all over the place here with the RSI and here with the MACD and the price oscillator. It's all over the place. So again, the question is, are they coming to a conclusion sooner rather than later, or do they drag out a little while? We'll be watching, but you can't ignore that we are forming divergences. The fact of the matter is, though, they may not be done yet. Still the possibility we go to these next levels of resistance, the trend lines I've been showing you in the last few updates. If we stall right here, they could play out sooner rather than later at the trend line, again, from these lows over here. And if I go to the near scaling, again, that trend line from 2017 to the 2021 highs is directly overhead, so that's a trend line I'll be paying attention to. If we get back above 100,000 on a closing basis, but still paying attention to these divergences as we've exceeded now 100,000. Now, at the moment, the impulse line representing momentum is still blue. It was red, actually, during the session with the 11% drop, almost 11.25% drop. But we came right back down to the lower end of the cloud, and we bounced, and that was horizontal support. And we'll be watching. Trend signals remain bullish. The momentum had flipped back to bearish. It turned now back to bullish. We'll see if it can remain that way. Is this a breakout and back test of the triangle? We see another push above 100,000, maybe on a closing basis, and then we'll be watching the target levels. If we do, I'll be watching to see, again, do we see the RSI and momentum here? Do we see them start turning back up and then turn back down to form a triple divergence? If we do we just overthrow, as I've talked about, just overthrow as we've done now here, this 100,000, just go up to 102, 103, 104, 105,000, quickly turn, or do we make it higher up to the linear trend line? If we reach it immediately, that would be around 105, 106,000, 108, 109 if we take our time. Go up to that 110, 115,000 area. We'll be watching to see how this unfolds. I'll be watching, okay, if it is a fake out, do signals turn back to, does momentum turn back to bearish? But it does look like a breakout and a back test of the triangle on the 4-hour chart. Got a couple of the X's here warning that we might see a short-term top soon. No red circle, there's no T for the topping. Short-term momentum, no S for the sell signal. Out is still bullish. The impulse line here is still bullish. Watching, again, I am expecting, all likelihood, a triple bearish divergence on that RSI that I showed you earlier in the video and here with momentum. Now, with the momentum line, with this bar, it actually started with the new bar that we just started for Friday. It started turning red at the beginning, at the open. We had a little bit of a rally. We're up about 0.5% now, and it has flipped back to blue. We had a little red arrow there like we had over here. And again, we've been going sideways with that triangle. We went from red to blue to red to blue. Notice the arrows. Momentum line did the same thing. So again, that sideways consolidation, and then now we had that push above 100,000. So we'll be watching to see if we get it on a closing basis. We are starting to form here a little shadow area telling us that a squeeze move is coming. So again, we'll see if we get further upside and if we get closes above 100,000. But just I'm looking at those levels in the weekly time frame. Those are resistance levels where, again, if we do rally further, price, if we can get above this area here, that price is likely going to stall. Again, signals remain bullish here, and again, the balance of power remains positive. If this is a breakout and back test of our triangle or not. Just as it is a breakout and back test. So keep your eye on that RSI. Do we end up getting a close above the 100,000 area, close above this peak here at 99,800? And if you do, then you've got the triple divergence underway here again. We're watching to see how we close the week out. Do we close strong? Do we close weak? That weekly time frame. Again, as we overthrew that trend line going back to the 2020 low after first 2021 peak and sell-off, again, got to be watching to see what kind of candlestick do we get here. Right now, you got a candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top or doji. We had that 9 count previously in the weekly time frame. Got to be watching. Again, do we go a little higher and then begin to turn around this trend line or go up to the next couple of trend lines I've been talking about? Linear scaling or that channel, going to be looking at this and see how we close by the end of the week. Do we rally with the jobs report tomorrow or over the weekend? How do we close on Sunday? I'll be watching this bar. So remember, back over here, when we had the 2021 tops, we did see topping tails. So again, do we end up seeing a topping tail or a couple of them surrounding this area? We'll see if we get back above the 100,000 area. See if we get a close, not just an intraday push above it, but if we get a close. But I'll be still watching. Do we see candlesticks in the weekly time frame that look like this here in the month of December or maybe going into January? You know, we broke out right here. We had an explosive move higher. Now, the sell-off gave us a topping tail with futures. This is Bitcoin futures right here. And then we reopened right after the close of the session. And again, they're still green. You know, we did get a red bar here for the session. Is what could happen. Even if we sell off, you could sell off and come back up. That's still very, very possible. Rallies surrounding the jobs report or on into next week or over the weekend here. Again, this may not be done yet, and we may end up seeing a larger divergence develop here over time that continues to develop as we move into next week with the inflation data or even on into just under 2 weeks from now with the Fed meeting. Something worth paying attention to, the awesome oscillator in the daily time frame. And here it is on the Bitcoin ETF IBIT. I'm still forming these massive negative divergences in the weekly time frame. Again, may not be done yet, but again, they are forming something really to be paying attention to in December and January. Now again, longer term, the bulls are in control as long as we hold above the blue line here. It's going flatlined right now at the 77,000 area. If we start a reversal here or go higher and start one, again, once you lose that level, that's the area where the trend can change. The bulls are in control. This is long-term support currently at 77,000. When you're above the line, good things are happening. Good things are happening. When you're below it, bad things are happening.